Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Shintaro Higashi Show with Peter Yu. First and foremost, shout out to Levon, one of our sponsors. Thank you very much. It's because of you that we can make this amazing podcast with so much information and interesting judo related stuff, grappling related stuff. So thank you very much. And if you want to support us, there's a Patreon and all that, right? Peter is in charge of it. Peter, do you want to plug it?
Yeah, so basically all the links are below in the descriptions. You can support us monthly and then you get to join our Discord server and then we can chat with us and then other grapplers online. So
Yes.
please
Very
support
nice.
us.
Yep.
And today we're gonna talk about I think one of the most talked about topics actually, but we never dedicate an episode to it.
Yep.
Should you compete?
Yeah. Should I compete? I get this
Yeah,
question daily on the regular. I get
yeah,
guys coming in like, hey, man, I'm not very athletic. I've never done judo, but I really want to compete. Do you have a competition team? Like, people
yeah.
love the idea of competition,
Right, right. So we
Yeah.
we had an episode about how to prepare for it, but I think
Mhm.
it's worth talking about if you should compete. And we talked
Yeah.
about a lot. And then, I mean, I
Yeah.
guess your thesis has been that you don't have to compete.
You don't have to compete. I don't
Yeah,
think it's necessary. I think sometimes it could do more harm than good.
yeah,
And I think, before you even ask that question, you just don't have enough information at hand. What is judo competition like? What are there's,
yeah.
for instance, like you go taekwondo or something, or you grew up doing
Right.
taekwondo, you could compete in form.
Yeah,
You could
yeah,
compete in like a cooperative demonstration division, and you
yeah.
could also compete in sparring
Hmm.
with modified rules.
Yeah,
Sometimes there's age divisions, sometimes there's weight divisions and belt divisions. You just don't know it, right? Like if you're just walking into a dojo and you're like, hey man, all these guys are doing competitions, like should I compete? You have no idea what you're walking into.
right.
So I think, you should express this to your coach. And then the first thing the coach should say is, hey, why don't you go check it out? Why don't you go
So
watch a
watch.
competition
Yeah,
first? And if they say anything outside of that, I'm going to be a little bit like wary. I should be a little bit of skeptical, right? Like, yes, of course, you should go compete. Let's train. We'll do this. We'll put you on this package. We'll put you on this training program. I
right,
don't think
right,
that's the right approach, because you don't really know, right? Whether you're cut out for it or whether it's something you actually want to do until you actually get to see what that's like.
hmm.
You know what I mean?
So the first step would be just to observe, like see a local tournament and support your teammates and then kind of
If
see
you have
what it is.
teammates that are
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're part of a dojo or a club that like is
Yeah.
very into competition,
Right.
and I'll give you like an example. Like I know a guy that runs a judo club and he has 3 kids and all 3 of his kids do judo. So
Mm.
like that's, and his kids are competitive. So like
Yeah.
everyone on that youth squad is competing because he's trying to build a community of competitors, right? And
Right.
the primary focus of that competition team is so that his kids can have a group, like a community going to these things.
Right.
I'm
Right.
not saying like he's just doing it for his kids, right? He's also running a dojo, teaching other kids and like inspiring. He's doing all the right things as a judo coach. You
Right.
know what I mean? That club's a little bit different than let's just say like the, for fun, let's just kind of like grapple and like learn a little bit of self defense. I mean, versus like the dojo that does like not kids judo, but like kids martial arts.
Yeah.
That's a
Or
whole nother animal
exercise,
too,
right?
you know?
Yeah.
And I know jujitsu schools that do this, kids martial arts, and their version of the competition is demonstration forms. That's it. Even though it's a jujitsu
Mm.
school, they do mostly regular form slash martial arts training for their kids. And
Oh,
eventually they get funneled into the jujitsu system, right? If
I
they're
see.
much more
So it's like
serious.
a general after school activity kind of thing. And then
Yeah, I know those
out
are
of
like
those,
that. Yeah.
out of those people, like
Yeah.
out of those kids, if they're interested, they can
Yeah.
dedicate more time into actually doing BJJ. I see.
Yeah. I know a jujitsu school that's packaged themselves as an MMA school. People come
Ah,
for MMA because they think
right.
they want to be cage fighters. But
Oh.
9 times out of 10, these guys are not cut out for cage fighting. They're not
Yeah.
professional MMA caliber people. They
Yeah.
think they are, right?
Yeah.
But the moment they get popped in the mouth, it's over. They don't want to
Yeah.
do it anymore. They
Yeah.
quit. They're soft. They're just not those kinds of people. So they use that. And then they funnel them into the jujitsu system, and people end up loving jujitsu, and then they stick to jujitsu. You see what I
Oh,
mean?
because it's less impact, like easier on the body kind of
It's
thing.
easier on the body.
Yeah.
More people can do it, right?
Right.
And
Right.
then they fall in love with jujitsu. They compete in jujitsu, and then if they want to make that transition back to MMA, they have the MMA
I see.
program that they could be part of,
Yeah.
right? So it depends all on this kind of a thing. What kind of competitions are we talking about?
Yeah.
So you have to have an open conversation with your coach about this stuff before you annoy your coach.
Mm.
Okay, before you you just signed up. You've been doing it for 3-4 months. Oh, I want to compete because I'm freaking tough and all this stuff. Before you do any of that stuff, right? You got to answer some of your own questions first. You got to
Right.
try to get as much information as possible. Talk to the competitors in the room. What is a good tournament to go watch? What tournaments are the guys going to next? Right? These kind of things. What is the preparation like? Do you want to be a part of that? What weight class should I be in? All these different questions have to be answered. And the more information you gather by sort of being in it, talking to competitors, going to these competitions and watching, right?
Yeah.
Even scoping out the guys that you're going to be in division with. Sometimes, right? You go to these local tournaments in judo, it's a novice division. White, yellow, green. Right? Sometimes you're masters.
Right.
Not enough masters. Sometimes you go uncontested and then they just jumble one big masters division. Yes, there are weight classes, but there's black belts in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So you got to sit there and
I've
watch.
seen that. Yeah.
I've seen that. I had novice green belts from my dojo go to a
Yeah.
masters competition and fight brown belts and black belts who've been doing judo for 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
Right.
You know what I mean?
There are a lot of variables here. So you talk to your coach, you talk to your teammates, and then you watch some tournaments and you've gathered enough information. So what should you, can you just say, okay, I'm ready? Like, can you just answer that question? I'm ready to compete by that.
I think a lot of us are not very good indicators of our own progress. Some people overestimate themselves. Some people underestimate themselves.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to accurately gauge whether you're ready for something like this.
Right.
But the one thing you can control is the output and training. How much training are you doing? If you're coming to judo twice a week and you're kind of out of shape, you have no business being in these things, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to encounter someone that trains 2-3 times as much as you, who's in great shape, who might be a better athlete to begin with. That guy's going to smoke you, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? So you kind of have to know where you stand on these things because you don't want to go out. It's like progressive over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you're just starting boxing and you go against Mike Tyson, he's going to take your head off. You're going to be injured. You're going to be dead. Right? So you want to obviously that's an extreme example, you know what I mean? But the risks are very high when you're doing judo competition, right? So you have to kind of know where you are, where you stand and where your training is, and you have to gauge that. If you're training all the time, let's just say even you're doing, let's say 3 days a week judo, 3 days a week judo, you're running twice a week, lifting twice a week, you put in 7 workouts a week consistently over the last 6 months.
Man.
Okay. Yeah. And you're a green belt in the room and you could do very well with all the green belts. Okay. You go into a competition, there's still a risk of being exposed to a technique or like a judo style that you never encountered. For instance, we don't teach a lot of Georgian stuff. We teach it, but nobody really does it. So you go against a Georgian kid from a Georgian judo club. When they encounter a guy that's coming over the back Georgian, you're going to probably get thrown.
Right.
But it's good exposure to gain that experience, right? But sometimes that loss can delineate your motivation or you could get injured. And now you've been taken off the path because you just weren't exposed to that stimulus. And there's no way to be exposed to all different judo styles if you're not competing, right?
Right.
So to be okay with that, right, it's a huge thing.
There's I think you mentioned 2 aspects of this. So first is the physical aspect where you can get injured or because you encounter something that you've never encountered before.
No.
So and there's another one, the mental side of things. So you might take the loss or the failure, which is pretty inevitable unless you're a phenom, I guess. And then you may not, take the failure well.
Yes.
So,
that's the thing.
So how would you, let's go over the physical part of things. So how would you, because you do have to, like you say, there's a lot of benefits in competing. Like, for example, it's a good test ground, and then you can actually, your judo can improve a lot by being exposed to different styles. But how do you minimize the risk while trying to take advantage of all the pros of competing, the benefits of competing in terms of physicality?
I mean, being in proper shape, right? That's a big one. If you're going out there and you can't do a full 5-minute round or a 4-minute round, then you obviously need to work on your conditioning. You know what I mean? Sometimes you have 4 matches in a day, almost, relatively close back to back. Sometimes they don't give you time to rest sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And in that case, you have to be able to do 4 rounds, 4 minutes straight through it. So 16 minutes straight, not straight, but with a little bit of time in between. right? So if you can't do 4 rounds back to back in your dojo, like, you're not there yet. You know what I mean? You got to be
Right.
strong as possible. Your joints and mobility and all that stuff that plays a role in this stuff. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's sort of the physicality. Like there's like a bare minimum, level of physical
Yeah.
ability that's necessary.
Right.
If you don't lift, if you're not running, if you're eating like shit, and then if you're just kind of like just doing judo twice a week and you're telling me you want to compete, I'm going to tell you no. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Because it's all risk is there. Like you're not doing everything you possibly can to put your best foot forward. And the injury risk is so high. What are you going to get out of it? You're probably going to lose and you're going to feel
Yeah.
bad and you're going to quit. You know what I mean? That's probably worse off as opposed to let's not compete in this day. Let's get you keep coming back for a year and maybe you'll be in much better shape next year right around now. And you're just in the best shape of your life. And now
Right.
you're training much more. And now maybe, you go out there, even if you lose, you put your best foot forward and you
Right.
prepare for something and the reward is there. Right. And then you could build off of that, But if you're a
The
fat
coach has
mess and
to
you're not
be very,
training, yeah.
The coach has to be aware and then really be able to guide their students.
Yes, I think it's irresponsible for a coach to be like, all right, guys, we're going to this thing. Everyone
Yeah.
sign up. Who wants to go? Anyone want to go? Yes, 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 yes. Let me
Right.
just sign it. Let's bring everybody. And I've known coaches who do like, all right, I'm burning a Saturday for you guys. There's a coaching fee.
Yeah.
Coaching fee's $25 a person. It's not that much, right?
Right.
You got 20, 30 guys going. You got 30 guys going. That's $600 or whatever. My math is
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not bad, so I know guys who do that. You know what I mean?
Uh,
But even then, it's like a little bit irresponsible, I think, because and it's not good for your business either. Because how do most people take failure? Not
Right.
well. Most people can't take good, even like constructive criticism in the office. Has to
Yeah.
be neatly packaged. It's got to be like a compliment sandwich. One nice thing, one constructive criticism, one nice thing. Right?
Yeah.
Man, I love the way you write, but
Yeah.
you could potentially work on this. But the work itself was great. I love the way you're putting out work. Okay, maybe it's digestible. Maybe that person
Yeah.
goes, all right, you know what? You're right. I got to
Yeah.
fucking work on this thing, right? Maybe, right? So, most people don't take failure well or criticism well. Some people cannot be coached properly, and sometimes like when you're having a conversation with someone that just walks up to you like, hey, I want to compete. And, 9 times out of 10, before I go into this deep thing of like, hey, all right, let's see why you want to compete. Are you properly
Yeah.
training? What is it going to take to get there? Do you know what to expect? All this stuff. It's a waste of my breath. So sometimes it's like, no,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Uh.
I should just point them to this podcast from now on.
Yeah. I think that's it's one of the main motivators for doing
Yeah.
this podcast,
Yeah.
right? Like, cause
That'd be good, right?
repeat questions. So, okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about how to answer the question of should you compete in terms of physical aspect, physical aspect of things. And you alluded to the mental side too. Like, let's talk about that. How can you tell if you're ready to compete mentally? Like, should I compete
mean,
and am I ready?
Sometimes, sometimes you just can't tell, right? But then having an
Yeah.
honest conversation, let's just say some kid is working really hard in the gym,
Yeah.
right? And he's motivated and he's doing it. He wants to get better. And then he's talking to me and he's like, hey, I want to compete and express. I want to ask the question to that kid, like, why? What do you think you're going to get out of this experience? Why do you want to do it?
Right.
If they have a good question, sometimes some people kind of have it intuitively. They kind of have this feeling, right? I want to pressure test my thing. I
Yeah.
want to be, stronger. I want to be, mentally tougher. I want to, make sure I could perform under pressure and all these different things, right? And whether or not they played sports in high school or just competitive sports, period, plays a role. You know what I mean? Playing baseball, getting up there, everyone's watching, your mom and dad, and you're like up at bat. You
Yeah.
strike out, you look like a loser. Like that pressure,
Mhm.
right? If you've been exposed to it, the merits of that already.
Right.
Right. But if you're like, oh, I've never played sports, I'm 20 something years old, I'm kind of like this spineless guy that just wants to get tougher. And I found martial arts for that purpose. Right? I was something missing and I want to be, stronger, tougher. I want to be a better version of myself. That person who's never truly been tested, maybe he's an
Yeah.
accountant or something, right? He's never had any
Yeah.
athletics or something like that. He sits in an office all day, maybe has back problems, whatever. That person, we have no clue how he's going to handle that pressure.
Right.
Maybe he has a panic attack side of the mat, which
Yeah.
that happened before, and you talk them down. I've had guys who, just can't perform, can't do it. They want to leave, you know what I mean? And you kind of have to make a decision on the fly, and sometimes the answer is like, hey man, if you walk away right now, you're going to hate yourself for the rest of your life, dude. You got to do this, knowing who he's going to go with.
Right.
Right. So you got to talk to the other coach. You got to do all these different things. You know what I mean? So you have to have somebody really that's in your corner that has your best interest, who knows you in
So
your
you,
corner,
so
not
you,
necessarily in your
yeah,
corner, but to guide you, because I'm not always at these things,
right.
because my priority is being a dad on the weekends. You know what I mean? So if 4 guys wants to go to a local tournament, I'm like, you guys go if you want. But I'm not going. I'm not burning a Sunday at the park with my daughter for 4 guys.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've been to a million of these, and then I don't even think it's a good idea for half of you guys to go.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it like that, but like I just can't justify it.
right.
You know what I mean?
So in terms of mental preparation, like to see if you're ready mentally to compete, if you have some competition experience, maybe you already have that intrinsic motivation, so we can kind of like, I guess in some sense you can say that you're ready to compete mentally. Is that what you're saying?
You know what it's like, man? You go through a hard breakup, right?
Yeah.
And then you're talking to your therapist.
uh,
You're talking about it. Oh, she said this one time, and I
uh,
was ruminating about it, and blah. And then my childhood, my
uh,
mom didn't love me the
uh,
way I
uh,
needed to be loved. And you go through all the shit. And then little by little, you talk about it, you get it, you understand it. And then little by little, and
yeah.
then one day, 6 months in, you tell your therapist, like, I think I'm ready to put myself out there again. You know what I
Right.
mean? And then
Yeah.
sometimes the therapist's like, you know what? You're right. Why don't you download Hinge, the best app on this planet? You know what right?
We're not sponsored by Hinge, by the way.
No, but they should sponsor me though. I'm a huge consumer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
one
see.
of their best. But anyway, so it's kind of like that, right? You're talking to your coach, you're having an open dialogue, and you have to answer these questions
Mm,
before you even get out there. Why are you doing this? Have you ever done this before? What do you think you could get out of it? Do you think you're prepared? What do you think it
right.
takes to get out there? What do you think your competition's like? Right? Have you spoken to the guys in the room who have gone? Right? And I love it that Gianni's out there now competing
Yeah.
on the world circuit, because the guys who are intermediates who are looking at competition, now they say, hey, that's where I want to be. I want to be able to watch the live stream, on Judo TV or whatever it is, even
Yeah.
though like the Pan American Opens are not very televised properly well, like higher end, Judo TV stuff, like you could watch.
Hmm.
Right? So I want to get there. I want to get there, so, seeing that and then talking to those guys, being in the room with some of those guys, I
Yeah.
think it's huge help, you know?
I see.
And then once you have that sort of a thing, and then you're like, you know what, I could dedicate myself to going, right? Then you could kind of even think about it. But, if you can't even string together 3 weeks of practice consistently back to back, 3 days a week,
Right.
then you really have no business even thinking about this stuff. And
Like,
that's
yeah.
okay though. That's okay, because it's
Yeah.
not everyone's thing. People have work, people have family, people have this, people have that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? People like to drink.
Yeah.
Like people like to go out on Friday night, get loaded, and then, be hungover on Saturday and Sunday, watch movies, and then like limp into work on
Yeah.
Monday, and then just come to Judo twice a week and make friends and work out every now and then. That person, that's fine. God bless you. I
Yeah.
love you. Come to the room, do Judo. I love you, man. But like competition is not for you unless you want to take this thing seriously. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. So
Yeah.
I see. So it's more of a dialogue. Like, you gotta have, basically you're aligning yourself with the coach and everyone around you to see, so that everyone
Yeah.
can kind of help you make that judgment if you should compete or not.
Yeah. The risk,
So
high
yeah.
risk,
Yeah.
high risk, low reward is
Yeah.
because you
You-
get a medal. But sometimes,
yeah.
you need that validation. Like, why am I doing this?
Right.
Day in and day out, getting small training, putting in the time. You need that medal every now and then. You need to go out there and just smoke someone and be like, wow. And sometimes you have like that need to show the world what you got. You know what I
Yeah.
mean, this is the art. This is my craft that I've been working on, and the
Mhm.
world needs to see it. It's your art, right? What is a
Nice.
painting without any eyes on it? You know what I mean?
That's right. So
I mean,
we've talked a lot about how adult hobbyists may answer this question, if they should compete or not. And you kind of briefly mentioned it earlier, and I'm very curious what you would say about this topic, about if kids should compete. So, you said that there's a gym owner that whose kids compete regularly.
yeah, yeah,
So I guess that there was in the family. So a lot of times I
yeah.
think kids have more of a extrinsic motivation, I guess, from their parents and whatnot. I'm sure you've seen a lot of those cases. So is it fine? Do you really need the kids to have some intrinsic motivation instead?
I'll tell you this, man.
Yeah.
When I was in elementary school,
Yeah.
I was in a swim team.
Yeah.
In the summer, my mom would put me in the swim team, right? Because it was kind of chubby. She was like, we'll put you in the swim team. So you're doing cardio every day. It was like a 2.5-hour workout, just swimming back and forth, back and forth. I sucked at it, but there were very competitive guys in the room.
Yeah.
Not in the room. It's not a room. It's in a pool.
The
right?
pool. Yeah.
Right. But you're in there every day with these kids swimming,
Yeah.
nonstop, doing laps, doing drills, doing laps, doing drills. I freaking hated it. We had to compete at the end of the season. Multiple competitions. It's a season. It's a summer season.
Yeah.
The thing goes off, you jump in the water and you freaking swim back and forth. I take last or 8th or 6th or whatever.
Yeah.
It just does not matter. There's no real consequences. These kids swim year round. Some parents are like, yo, I was a D1 swimmer. My kid's going to be a swimming champion. I couldn't care less about those kids, right? Because I felt like I could take these guys down, I will. You know what I mean? I had different values. You know what I mean? I cared about different things, but I could limp into it. No problem, right? I could just do it. It felt like I was going to jump into the water and drown. Right.
Right.
I'm swimming back and forth. I may come in last, and I did actually pretty good, but like, it doesn't matter. The consequences are low, and usually we still got a participation, At one time they were like, nobody wanted to do the butterfly. I was like, I'll do it.
Nice.
And I got a sick medal. I almost couldn't even finish it. It was like me and like a couple other kids, and all the kids, when you're at that age, they look like they're drowning. Than the butterfly. Dude, I competed in one day, dude. I don't know why, but like my dad was like, just do all of them. Just say yes to everything.
Yeah.
So in so many events, it was like backstroke, breaststroke, relay this and that, and then, butterfly. No consequences. I don't swim year round. I do like a fraction. It doesn't matter. But you're doing judo once or twice a week. You're playing chess on Wednesdays, soccer on Thursdays. Friday, you're doing reading and writing. You get a Russian kid that's doing judo 6 days a week with a judo dad, and that dad's love depends on how well that kid does in competition. That kid will put you on your head. You know what I mean? So in that way, like the consequences are much, much higher. And I know kids that got injured, good kids that got injured in these competitions, because yes, there's like, let's not make the kids do drops. Let's not make the kids do tanetoshi. Unage or suplex is kind of dangerous at that age, so let's kind of not do it. All that stuff does not matter when you're dealing with some of these tough, competitive clubs. In fact, they teach it to their kids specifically. Hey, if the guy gets the overhead and they go for a turn throw, you wrap the waist and bomb them on their head. And they're drilling suplexes, 7, 8-year-old kids. You know what I mean? And the kid that's at my club doing it once a week, like in between like math and like hockey or whatever it is. It's just, so like, unless you really know, right? Like unless the kid's really doing judo, I can't really recommend it. I mean,
I see.
Just the general population of my dojo, like, okay, there's an exception. There's kids who are very, very good, who's dedicated, who comes many times a week.
Yeah.
Those kids, yes. Right.
If you're doing it as a after school activity.
If you're doing it as an after school activity, no.
Amongst many. Yeah.
That's why Taekwondo is so good, because there's demonstration, there's form, pumse, they call it,
pumse, yeah.
Yes.
You actually, we talked about this in one of the episodes, old episodes. You talked about having like a form competition for kids, right? Like
yes, I'm a huge believer of this.
Yeah.
If you look at my kids program, how many kids compete? Let's look at every single dojo on this planet, or in the United States, right? And look at their kids program. How many of those kids compete? All right, very small percentage.
Yeah.
How many of those kids who compete end up quitting because they freaking hate it? A big percentage, even bigger percentage.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see.
Well, let's just say we could tap into like the 90% of kids that are going to judo but not competing, but they could demonstrate an inside trick. They could demonstrate an osotogari, right?
And they could get some
and then they
that
could get
validation.
A medal. Yeah, and they could get that competitor status. Because a lot of these schools, when they have competition teams, competition classes, there's a 2-tiered thing, right? There's a hierarchical thing that happens, right?
Right.
You become first-class citizens at the dojo if you're competing, and you become second-class citizens if you're not competing, And that's messed up. It's really messed up. It's not fair. I know life is not fair, right? But what happens to those kids who can be motivated, who could get to that level?
Right.
Those kids never end up doing it because they say, you know what? I'm not cut out for this. Is generally what happens. parents. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm telling you, we had this kid like for years and years and years, came to the dojo 2, 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Both his parents were not great athletes. The kid just wasn't hardworking at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we had this conversation many times. The parents were like, I want to take him to this competition. I want to take him to this competition. I kept saying no. I was like, the kid's not ready. How can we get the kid ready? It's like, like a very difficult conversation, And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
a few times, man, they like took him to these competitions and he was like a teen, like a 13, 14 years old
Yeah.
at the time. And he got freaking smoked.
So they
He got
took
smoked.
despite your
Yeah.
warnings or
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to suggest against it. And they would sometimes just go. And I'll find out about it afterwards. Right. And then sometimes they would question me like, yo, it's like, how come, like you're teaching him judo 3 times a week, my kid can't win?
Yeah.
It's like, first of all, there's a bunch of kids in the dojo that I teach that are winning,
Yeah.
but that's not the point, you know? And I think the real issue was that the kid wasn't an athlete and
Yeah.
that can happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just like, base talent, right? The fundamental talent.
But he
Yeah.
didn't work hard. You know what I mean? Like, well,
Yeah.
you need to put in the time. You need to do other things. You gotta, he was doing baseball, this and that, and he had like a full schedule. And judo was something that he did on the side. Like if you're
Right.
doing that on the side, how do we expect him to compete against these kids who are doing it 5 days a week? And there was a communication breakdown because they had
Right.
this idea that this kid was a phenom. He was like, my kid's so good at
Right.
judo. He's already a blue belt, which is like, that thing is misleading too. Just because he has the highest belt in the room, it means he's been doing it for longer, right?
Mhm.
And when he's getting beat by like green belts and such, it's a huge shock to them,
Yeah.
because they've never done judo. They've never done grappling. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And I used to tell the dad, like, yo, you should take a judo class and see what it's like. Because he was so
did.
like hard on his kid.
Yeah.
When it comes to this stuff, he's like coaching from the side. He's like a hard-nosed guy.
Uh,
But this guy never played sports. Visibly,
I-
like he just never played sports. He's the softest looking dude. Like, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like
Yeah.
yelling at his kid from the sidelines about him doing push-ups. And one time I said to him, like, why don't you get out of that and do push-ups?
Oh my God.
Why don't you show him how it's done?
I think that's
Oh, yeah, I have a shoulder issue. You know what I mean? Like, that really bothered me. You know what I mean? He's forcing his kid to compete. And I'm telling the family, it's like, I don't think it's a good idea. Yeah, it was just like a mess. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm very mixed feelings about this stuff,
especially kids. I guess like especially with kids, the issue can be more complicated because of what you just described. Like there are more external influences, I guess. Like for an
Yeah.
adult hobbyist, you're an adult. You make your own decision. If despite
Yes.
everyone telling you no, not to compete, you still go ahead and compete and get hurt. I mean, it sucks that you got hurt, but at the end of the day, the responsibility falls on you. But with
Yeah.
kids, it's tough.
I mean, don't get me
yeah.
wrong. It sounds like I'm so anti-competition, but I've been through the circuit, and I think there's very, very lots of great things that you gain from
Yeah.
competing.
Right.
So, I'm for it too, right? There's a lot of pros when it comes to the stuff, right? Pressure testing the system, you get exposed to new styles.
Yeah, and then
Going out there and competing under a rule set. And, when you're training in the dojo, there's no penalties. There's no gamification. When you step out of bounds, it doesn't mean anything, you know?
Right.
So there's a lot more other things that you have to keep track of, which makes it a little bit more of an interesting game, I could go out there against a non-experienced person, force 2 penalties and kind of ride that,
Yeah.
and let them make a mistake. That's a whole another skill in itself.
Right.
You could beat guys without throwing. That's the craziest thing. You look at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You could pull guard, sweep him once,
Bumps, and
or
then,
pull guard, get one advantage and keep it and win it,
Yeah.
And a lot of high-level guys do that. That's a skill in itself.
And also, I'm talking about her because we've had her as a guest, the Tara.
Yeah.
She's one of the cases where competition worked out great. She was such a mature teenager already.
Yeah.
She was doing great at school, and also she was very dedicated to judo.
Yeah.
And her dad also trained, and I think that a lot of things went well. And then you are fully behind her competing. Like you went
Yes. Yeah.
a lot of the competitions with her and all.
I
right?
think after a certain point, when you're in
Yeah,
the room and you're doing very, very well and you're beating most of the people, eventually you're going to want an accolade to validate
yeah,
your standing in the sport. You know what
right.
I mean? Once you're beating most of the guys in the room and you're training and you're putting the time in and you're dedicated and you care, you want to be exposed to new games and you want to be able to sharpen and be exposed to new ideas. There's no better inspiration than going out there
Yeah,
and then, rolling the dice in the black belt division. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yep.
Every now and then you get a guy that's top 10 in the world, even in the local division. There's a
Hmm.
Georgian guy that competed for Team Georgia.
Yeah,
He was an Olympian that moved here. I don't know what he's doing here, unloading trucks or something. But
yeah.
he's does just works, does manual labor and then,
Yeah,
competes.
I've competed with those kids. Yeah,
Those kids are
in New
killers.
York
You know what I
State.
mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, New York State championships. Once you have that, oh man, I fought a guy that was on the world team or a national team of this country or that. I could compete with some of the best guys in the world, and you kind of know where you're standing, and you have some of these accolades. Like you took third in the New York States,
yeah, yeah.
you
Took
took
third.
seventh in nationals,
Yeah,
right? That's an accolade that no one can ever take away from. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Peter Yu, who is he in judo, right? Oh, I'm a black belt and I took seventh at nationals and third at New York States.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay. And now you have that for the rest of your life. You know what I
yeah.
mean? That's kind of a good feeling, right, Peter?
Yes, yeah. I mean, you could say that, the state tournaments are not as big, but still, I went out there and then fought those guys. New Jersey
That's
State
still New
champ, I
York
was
State,
at.
Yeah.
New York State third,
Yeah.
New Jersey State champ. Nationals, that was well, not a lot of people can go there. Yeah.
But
It
that's a
was really,
great thing,
yeah,
So I think at one point that it's nice to have somebody's accolades and put yourself out there to take the risk.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And you'll always have that, and it distinguishes you from
yeah,
somebody that never stepped out. You know what I mean? Because it's uncomfortable,
right.
and like I said, the risks are very high for a very low reward. But when
Mm,
you get that reward, you can wear it proudly,
yeah,
right? I was
yeah,
on the national team, or I was on whatever it is, and I was
well,
on the team. I was able to make it to this level. That a lot of people cannot. So in so many ways, yes, but the preparation to get there, I think, it's immense.
yeah,
Even at the local level, to be
yeah,
properly prepared, to know what it's expected really to do well at these
mm,
things. And I think most people just want to do it because of their ego, or they think that they
yeah.
overestimate their own skill, or they think that they're special when they're really not. I mean, that sounds harsh, right? But,
Yeah, I think
are
that's
you in
yeah,
shape? Are you putting in the time? Do you know what's out there? And all these things warrant a conversation with somebody that actually knows and gives a shit.
yeah. To summarize, yeah, we talked a lot about talk, covered a
Yeah.
lot of topics, but to summarize, the most important thing is to have realistic conversations. I guess the more you have to be real about where you stand and where others stand, and you have to have a lot honest conversation with people around you about this. It's not a simple question of like, oh, once you get your blue belt or whatever, you're ready to compete. It's not as simple as that.
Yes. Not as
Yeah,
simple as that. Talk to
yeah,
your coach.
yeah.
You know?
All right.
Yeah.
That's about it for today's episode. Anything else?
Nope.
Good.
That's it.
All right, cool. All right, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.